So this is attempt number 2 at this new episode of Cinematic Disasters for Space Jam. My camera stopped recording after about 10 minutes. Again. Getting real sick of this happening, but it happens constantly. There are so many videos on my channel that are the second or third try because my camera just stops recording. So anyway, last time I promised a 90s cult classic, and I'm following up on that promise with 1996's Space Jam. I know this one has a huge cult following for some reason, and no, obviously I don't like this. I am not among those cults. It's not really... I'm losing track. Always on the second attempt, I'm just like dead. I'm just like, I don't want to do this again. But I'm doing it again. So, if you can't tell, I do like basketball. In the last few years, I'm not a huge fan of the NBA anymore because it's been ruined by assholes like LeBron James and various others. Same reason I'm not a huge fan of the MLB or NFL anymore. It's been ruined by shitbags like Colin Kaepernick. So, no, I'm not a huge fan of the NBA anymore, but I do like basketball. I used to play it all the time when I was a kid, so obviously. And I like the Looney Tunes. Don't get me wrong, I didn't... Like I said before many times, I grew up watching Disney Channel stuff, so the Looney Tunes, I didn't watch that often. I did watch every now and then, though. Like, I remember my grandparents had Boomerang. We did not at home, that's why I didn't watch it as much. But my grandparents had Boomerang. Every time we'd go out there for, like, Christmas or summer or something, we'd always watch a lot of the old Boomerang cartoons and, of course, a lot of the Looney Tunes ones. And their movies have been hit and miss, to say the least, because a lot of their old ones were just clips from the Looney Tunes shows that came before it. Some of them were new footage. Then we had This Abomination. Then we had Back in Action with Brendan Fraser, which wasn't very good either. And then we had the fecal matter known as Space Jam: A New Legacy last year. I already tore into that one in about a 15-minute video. You can go watch that. But I'm going to tear into the first one here. Now, you're probably thinking, how did this movie even come into existence? I know I thought that when I was a kid. Even as a kid, I'm like, why does this exist? And I'll tell you why. It's a commercial. You think I'm joking, but no. This is one of those things like, oh, it's just a big commercial. Like The Wizards, like, oh, it's just a big commercial for Nintendo, or 8 Crazy Nights, where it ended up just being a big-ass commercial. God, I cannot get over the product placement from that movie. That was some real bad shit. But this one is literally a commercial, and I'll tell you why. Back in the early 90s, when Nike first thought of the Air Jordans, back when they first came about, obviously they had Jordan on board, otherwise they legally couldn't make them, I guess. But they wanted to bring in something to grab the attention of younger kids. Because younger kids sure as hell don't watch basketball, right? And so they made a deal with Warner Brothers, and they got some of the Looney Tunes into their ads, which ended up being huge hits. And they ended up doing ads for other places, McDonald's, Nike, toy companies, and a bunch of t-shirt companies. I'm not going to list them all here, because I like to keep my videos under a half hour as much as possible. But then the geniuses up in corporate decided, why don't we turn these 30-second ads into an hour and 30-minute movie, essentially making a 90-minute commercial, and we can also get money from people. That seems to be the business model nowadays. It's like anything nostalgic we can milk for as much money as possible. And you think of, especially when it comes to Warner Brothers, because they had the second Space Jam movie, which was awful, Matrix Resurrections, which was awful, and I'll get more into the Matrix Resurrections at the end of the video, and you'll understand why in a bit. It's just, it hurts. It really does. So, but this was back in the 90s, so this one you can give a little bit more leeway. If it were to come out today, it would be just as bashed as it was back in 1996. But in 1996, people just saw it as a bad movie. And yeah, it's pretty bad. So let's get into that bad movie, shall we? Movie opens with Michael Jordan dropping out of the NBA. The first time. Guess he did drop out multiple times. Some people don't know. And then it cuts to the moon, because of course it does, where there's an alien who runs a theme park, and they want to capture the Looney Tunes. Sounds like I'm talking like Disney World. Or no, it'd be Disneyland, because that one's in California. So yeah, it sounds like I'm talking about Disneyland here. And then the Looney Tunes retaliate by challenging them to a basketball game. The aliens are this big. They go from my waist to about my nipples. They're about this tall. Looney Tunes could probably squash them, and it'd be done, and they can move on with their lives. But no, they challenge them to a basketball game. Sure, they're this big, but you think aliens, they're going to do something that can give them an advantage, and sure enough, they do, where they steal the talent of some of basketball's greatest players. Also, apparently steals their acting talent, too. And I swear one of them is played by a young Michael B. Jordan. I could be wrong. I'm sure the disembodied text will tell me if I'm wrong or not, but I swear one of them's a young Michael B. Jordan. But I digress. And then they become these 20-foot huge monsters that the Looney Tunes are going to wipe the floor with the Looney Tunes. And during this, we also see Michael Jordan. He joins the minor league baseball, which people might think is just really dumb for the movie, but no, that was real. He wanted to follow his father's footsteps to play baseball, and he was pretty abysmal at it. I wasn't alive in the 90s to see any of this. I don't watch minor league baseball to begin with. But I've seen stats, and they're pretty embarrassing. And then we get a bunch of scenes with him and his family that are some of those boring scenes I've seen out of a Looney Tunes movie, and that says a lot, because Back in Action had some pretty dumb scenes, and so did the sequel, but I've already ranted about the sequel long enough, and I probably won't ever talk about Back in Action. I don't think it's bad enough to get a review like this. And then they kidnap Michael Jordan. I would say the Looney Tunes recruit him, but no, they flat out kidnap him. They've already committed a felony, and the movie's only 20 minutes in. Great. And then his assistant, played by Wayne Knight, of all people, because why not? And when I said this movie was a commercial, I wasn't, like, when I said I wasn't kidding that it was a commercial, there are direct references to McDonald's stuff, Nike, a bunch of other shit, especially in one scene. At least it doesn't do the 8 Crazy Nights thing where it actually shows you it as well. It's just mentioned. But it's pretty noticeable. Well, it's still pretty bad. And so, but something else I want to bring up. They just get one basketball player. I know he was like the best of the best around the time. But seriously? Just one? That's it? Come on. And nothing happens for a good 40 minutes. It's just some really bad attempts at comedy. I should mention that Michael Jordan is not a very good actor here. Fantastic basketball player. An actor he is not. Just because you're good at one thing. Because not everybody in the sports world is going to be like The Rock, where he went from UFC fighting, is it UFC? I don't care. And then went to acting and was really good at it. Or most people are going to be like, well, Michael Jordan or LeBron James. LeBron James I fucking hate. And I'm glad his acting sucked. But Michael Jordan, nothing personal against him. At least nothing that I didn't know about. But he's just not a good actor. Same thing with Elon Musk. Seems like a cool guy. He's made all these cool companies. He's not an actor, though. But that's not his fault. He has no acting training. They just need to stop putting him in shit. But once again, I digress. So yeah, like I said, nothing happens for a good 40 minutes. And you get all your favorite Looney Tunes, and you get Bugs Bunny, you get Marvin the Martian, you get Taz, is that the tornado guy's name? You get Lola Bunny, wait. Who now? Yeah, this is one of the big controversies of this film, which I fucking hate that word, by the way. Because it's been overused so much for liberal bullshit nowadays that it's lost all meaning. Same thing with racism. Words lost all meaning now. But not here to talk about that. We're getting into Lola Bunny. They made a female bunny in this movie. I guess trying to bring in more of the female crowd, which, okay, not a bad idea, but they didn't give her any personality traits. They didn't. They tried to make her the sexy one, I guess, but she's a rabbit. Gross. And she was, of course, voiced by Zendaya in the second movie, and character wasn't any better there. She was just as flat. Just with the... And why did they feel the need to replace the voice actress? Why did they feel the need to subject Zendaya to that? I don't know. But, of course, we get to the Space Jam at the end of the movie, with, like, 40 minutes left, or maybe 30, I don't know. By that point, I've mentally checked out, and by the time the basketball game finally starts up, my brain starts to click on again, because it's like one of the only mildly entertaining scenes in it. And of course, the Looney Tunes get their hand-drawn animated asses handed to them. And nobody doesn't get beaten or flattened or something. Even the grandma. She's over there just with her pom-poms, just sitting on the bench, and she gets flattened along with Wayne Knight. By, like, 3 of them. The 3 of these big-ass monsters, because Daffy just threw the ball over there. And I should also point out something about this movie that's really infuriating. The Looney Tunes aren't funny. They're rude, obnoxious, very loud, and all around unpleasant, but they're not funny. Like, at all. Especially during the basketball scene. The jokes aren't funny. Even the physical comedy isn't very good. And that's something that I talked about in the second, or maybe I don't know if I talked about it, but in the second movie, there's like no physical comedy to it. At least not as much as you would need for a Looney Tunes one, because that movie was just shove as many Warner Brothers references in your face as you can get. This one, I will give credit, has more dignity because it didn't do that. It stayed contained with the Looney Tunes. It didn't feel the need to shove in Batman or all this other, or Scooby-Doo or Yogi Bear or all their other Hanna-Barbera characters or any other Warner Brothers characters. They kept it contained, which I can give them immense credit for. This movie, as bad as it is, at least has more dignity than its sequel. And has a lot more dignity than Ready Player One. So take that for what it's worth. And then Michael Jordan makes the deal with the alien guy, where Michael Jordan will go be the slave for him if they lose. And they do this stupid joke where, like, Michael Jordan has water with him and then, like, buffs up all the Looney Tunes. Like, they all become, like, these freaking bodybuilder-looking things. You know, like, the kind of muscle that you look at somebody and it's very uncomfortable to look at. It's animated here, so it's less uncomfortable to look at. It just looks stupid. I'm like, I get the idea that water hydrates you during a game. I've been doing that I've been playing sports since I was 4, so I know all about that. And hell, I'm a runner. I need as much water as possible. But good God, well, like, this isn't funny. I will give it credit, it could be worse. They could have thrown in some shitty product placement there and said, oh, this makes you buff. Like, I can just imagine a shitty joke nowadays that wasn't in Space Jam 2, probably because they didn't have the rights to it, but if they did, they would have done it, where someone drinks a Red Bull and they get wings. Get it? Because the Red Bull gives you wings? I can just imagine a shitty joke like that, so I will give credit that it wasn't product placement. It was just a stupid joke. And then, of course, it comes down to Michael Jordan score the final point. He does this really uncomfortable, like, his arm stretches out like Mr. Fantastic, and he ends up dunking the ball, and, like, how does this work? It is shown, like, it's shown, like, he and Wayne Knight, like, they can be, like, flattened or something, and it won't affect them because they're getting hit with cartoon characters. It's, the rules don't really apply in that world. But he shouldn't be, there's a difference between that and animatingly, that's not a word, but it is now, stretching out your arm like Plastic Man to dunk the basketball when you are not a cartoon character. I don't understand the logic of this movie, but I guess there is none. So, of course, it wraps up. He gives the basketball players back their talent, the Looney Tunes go back to being not funny, and Michael Jordan goes back to playing basketball again. God, this movie sucks. I mean, I get why kids like this movie. Like, if I my brother's never seen it, but if I showed it to him, he'd probably like it, but I don't get why adults would like this. This movie had 4 writers and none of them knew, and I guess none of them realized that they were making crap. Like, nowadays, 4 writers is like a minimum for most movies, unless you're like Marvel Studios. Because every other movie has like 4 or 5 writers at the bare minimum. And that's why a lot of movies suck nowadays, because they have too many different people trying to pull the movie in different directions. This one, it seems like they all had one clear vision, but that vision was absolute shit. So, yeah, you can't tell. I will never understand why adults like this movie. Again, it's a kid's movie. I understand why kids like it. Same thing with, like, Sonic the Hedgehog. Like, I get why kids like it. Like, there's a difference between a family movie and a kid's movie. A family movie is something like Pixar or DreamWorks or one of these really good films. Then you have a kid's movie, which a lot of the time is loud, obnoxious, juvenile, and all around unpleasant for adults. Something like the awful Cat in the Hat movie springs to mind, or Sonic the Hedgehog, or this. This is not pleasant to watch. I know I sound like I'm being really harsh, but it deserves to be said. I don't never understand why people like this. The animation, for the Looney Tunes, it doesn't look that bad, but it just... And I do appreciate that they spent enough time in the animated world, and they actually had Michael Jordan live action in it, other than animating him in like they did with LeBron James in the second one, because I guess they wanted him on set as little as possible. There is a villain, but it's a kid's movie villain, unlike Algae Rhythm from the... Basically what I'm getting at here is, compared to the second movie, it's a goddamn masterpiece. But as a movie on its own, it's not good. The animation doesn't get any laughs. Michael Jordan's boring as hell. The scenes in the real world are also boring as hell. The Looney Tunes, like I said, aren't funny. The basketball scene is okay. At least it has more... Like, again, it has more physical comedy than the shitty new one, which, based off its jokes on pop culture references and god-awful verbal jokes and Porky rapping for some reason. Ugh. That was cringe to 11. But this still isn't a good movie. I don't get why people like this. Okay, I keep doing this because I need a second to think. If you like the movie as a kid and you still have fond memories of it, that's fine. I still like Phantom Menace, and people are like, really? Why? Because that was my movie as a kid, so I still really like... I actually think Phantom Menace is actually legitimately a decent movie, unlike this, but I don't get how people can unironically enjoy... Or how people can unironically enjoy this. I don't even get how people can ironically enjoy this. I can't. I just see this as just a mess. It's not funny. It's a waste of an hour and 40 minutes. Or however long this garbage fire is. Okay. But that wraps it up for Space Jam. Next time, we're going to be looking at another 90s movie that everybody likes, that I can't stand. Yeah, we're doing another one. So, I'll see y'all then.